and the Saxons and the Jutes were invading and such. And you've got a fairly short introduction, which I don't really want to add to you. I want to get right into this Breton lay, or that's one word for it. As a Breton lay, it's also a romance. Which ultimately, what all romance means is that it is of the style, essentially, of Rome, right? Even though this has nothing to do with Rome, okay? When we use the term today, romance or romantic, it always has to do with, so modern romance always has to do with eros, some kind of erotic love, okay? It didn't in the Middle Ages. And usually when we talk about a Middle English romance, of which Breton lays were a variety, when we talk about Middle English romance, there is some kind of, make that so you can read it, love element, okay? There is also some kind of quest aspect, let's say. And then there's also usually a supernatural element. So, for example, according to that kind of definition, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is a romance. Okay? You have a love element. It's not necessarily between Sir Gawain and the lady, okay? But there is a love element. There is at least the lust element on the lady's part, if we want to take her testing of Sir Gawain seriously. There's a quest aspect. What's the quest? He has to find the Green Knight. You could even say the quest is deeper than that. He has to find himself, the true Sir Gawain, okay, and not, the press clippings that he believes about himself. And the supernatural element. How is the knight green?
His skin, his hair, his clothes, his
okay,
clothes.
that's physical. Morgan Le Fay has transformed him green. Why? Okay, why else? I mean, yes, we are told that she was hoping Guinevere would die. Okay, when the Green Knight comes in. Why else? The Green Knight kind of alludes to it when he's at Arthur's table, right when he rides in, but then we also hear more later. They want to test Arthur's court. They want to see if it really is what everybody says it is. Is it really as pure and good and true and noble and chivalrous and all those kinds of things that everybody says, okay? Now, Lanval is kind of in this tradition. Only, as I said, it is a Breton lay, okay? Let's look at this word first. This means it's a relatively short lyric. Now, we think of lyric today as, like song lyrics. I don't know of any top 40 or top 100 song lyrics that are 645 lines long. I mean, wouldn't get a lot of airplay with that. Okay, so short is a relative term. Okay, this word, primarily from Brittany or influenced by the style of Brittany. In, for example, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, if my mind doesn't lose it, the Merchant's Tale. Merchant's Tale is a Breton lay. What Chaucer does in the Canterbury Tales is he gives you almost all the different variety of medieval genres that are available. You get the classical romance with the Knight's Tale. You get the burlesque or the fabliau with the Miller's Tale and the Wife of Bath's Tale somewhat. But the Miller's Tale, the Reeve's Tale plays on those also. You get Breton lay, and a variety of others, okay, because there's quite a few different tales there. So, one other thing, look at her dates. 1155, 1215. She's in that period of 1154 to 89 when Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine are ruling. Okay, and again, it's under Eleanor of Aquitaine that a lot of the courtly love tradition, in fact, all of the courtly love tradition, arises. All right? And so we open page 107, right-hand side. I shall tell you the adventure of another lay, just as it happened. It was made about a very noble vassal. In Breton, they call him Lanval. In English, this guy's name is Lanval, because we do have a Middle English version of this story. The king was staying at Cardwell, Arthur the valiant and courteous, on account of the Scots and Picts who were ravaging the country. They came into the land of Logres. Okay, your gloss tells you it's the Celtic word for England. Not quite. It's the Celtic word for the heart of not England, Britain. Okay, or to use another Celtic word, Albion. Okay, which means the white land. So he's staying at Cardwell, and the Scots in the picture coming in, and there's destruction. And we're told now it's at Pentecost in the summer. When's Pentecost? 50 days after Easter. Okay, and the king had taken up his residence, and he's giving out gifts to the members of the round table. And we're told, line 16, they had no equal in the world. Right? He shared out wives and land among all, except one who had served him. So all the knights of the round table received gifts from King Arthur, all except for one, Lanval, or Lanval in Middle English, whom he did not remember. Now, you can take that to mean that Lanval is so inconsequential that, Arthur's going around the table and he just kind of skips over him. But that's not what it means, as we find out from the rest of the description about Lanval. Nor did any of his men favor him. That is, nor did any of Arthur's men favor him. So Lanval is kind of like a persona non grata here in Camelot. Nobody gives him any respect. For his valor, his generosity, his beauty, his prowess, most people envied him. Maybe that gives us a reason why nobody pays him any respect. They're all jealous. Many a one pretended to love him who wouldn't have complained for a moment if something bad had befallen the knight. So you get this idea that there's almost a silent conspiracy about, if Lanval gets in trouble, let him deal with it himself. He was a king's son of high lineage, but he was far from his heritage. Why? He's not native born. Okay? He's not, quote unquote, English or British, let's say. He's part of the king's household. He had spent all his wealth, for the king gave him nothing. Nor did Lanval ask him for anything. Now, how did he spend his wealth? We've not been told yet. That is, we've not been told that he's been, out spending it, profligately on wine, women, and song, so to speak. But we are told, even though he'd spent everything, he doesn't go asking the king for help. Now Lanval is very unhappy, sorrowful, and anxious. Lords, do not wonder. Who's the lords? The audience of the poem. This is an indication to us that this Breton lay, as an example, and I think almost all of Marie de France's Breton lays have little clues like this, are orally delivered. Okay? Lords, do not wonder. A foreign man without support is very sorrowful in another land when he does not know where to seek help. It's kind of like one of those little gnomic passages in Beowulf. Here it's a little gnomic passage in Lanval. The knight of whom I'm telling you, who had served the king so well, got on his horse one day and went off to enjoy himself. Why? Because he can't enjoy himself at Camelot. He doesn't have, apparently, anyone who's close to him. So he gets on his horse and he's going to go right out into the woods. And so he goes out of the town, he goes to a meadow. And remember what I said last week or 2 weeks ago? What do you never do? You never ride out into a meadow or in the woods, get off your horse and fall asleep leaning against a tree on a nice summer day. Why? Because he unsaddles it and goes off. He lets the horse roll around in the meadow. He folds the end of his mantle, lays it down under his head, and falls asleep. He's worried by his difficult situation. He sees nothing that pleases him, we're told. And as he lay there like this, he sees two maidens suddenly coming. He'd never seen any more beautiful. Now keep in mind, where does he tend to spend most of his days? At Camelot with Guinevere. And it's not only Guinevere that's a knockout. Okay? There are other women at Arthur's court that are beautiful. But none of them are as beautiful as these two. They were richly dressed and very tightly laced in tunics of dark purple. Why purple? Royalty, very good. They had exceedingly lovely faces. The elder was carrying basins of gold, fine and well made. I shall tell you the truth without fail. The other carries a towel, and they go right to where he is sleeping. So they bring wash basins and a towel. Lanval, who was very well bred, got to his feet to meet them. Why are we told he was very well bred? How do we know he's very well bred?
He's educated, but he's also showing manners.
Exactly. He stands up. When a woman enters the room, he stands up. Have you ever seen the film? Man, I hate when it happens. It's a film about a dance teacher in New York with Antonio Banderas. Anybody know the film I'm talking about? Dance with Me. Okay, and it's based on a true story. Okay, Antonio Banderas plays an owner of a dance studio, and he decides he wants to teach inner city youth ballroom dancing. I'm talking rough and tumble, okay, kids. And one day he's in the principal's office because he wants to pitch this idea to her, and he's sitting in a chair, and one of the teachers comes in, female, and he immediately stands. He's got this kid sitting next to him who's in trouble, okay, and he stands. Teacher comes in, she goes to the other end, he sits back down. Another one comes in, and this goes on for like 5 minutes. Teachers, women coming in and out, and he's, bouncing up and down like a jack in the box. And he explains to the kid, he's like, man, what's the deal? Just get their number, and and he's like, no. This is all about, and he uses the word manners and courtesy. How you treat a woman will determine how you are treated in return, etc. Okay, it's a wonderful film about the need for the niceties of life. Okay, so he gets to his feet, and they greet him first. They tell him their message, and they say, Sir Lanval, my lady who is most noble, wise, and beautiful, sent us for you. Come along with us. Okay, remember what I said a couple weeks ago. What do the elves usually want? They either want slaves to work or sex slaves. We will convey you safely to her. Look, the pavilion is right here. And so he goes with them. He doesn't worry about his horse. They lead him up to the tent, but he didn't notice any tent before. It's like now this tent is suddenly there. And the tent's beautiful. And then we get a list of kind of beautiful things. Not Queen Semiramis when she was at her richest and most powerful and wisest, nor the Emperor Octavian could have bought the right flap. That is, just the opening to the tent. A golden eagle was set on top of it, implying or showing kind of the, I can't think of the word, so I'll make one up, imperialness, okay? of whoever owns this tent. Okay? So the speaker goes on and tells us about the quality of the tent. And inside the tent was the maiden, about line 93 or so. Her beauty surpassed the lily and the new rose when they bloom in summer. Lily and the rose. Why those two flowers? Why not the periwinkle and the jasmine?
Lily and rose are traditional symbols of beauty. Lily, chastity, rose, not so much.
Lily, chastity, and purity. Rose, not necessarily the opposite. Passion and love. Okay. She lay on a very beautiful bed. The sheets were worth a castle. I mean, we're talking what, like 6,000 thread, count sheet, in nothing but her shift. So she's wearing like a little see-through nightie. In other words, not much. Okay. Her body was very elegant and comely. She had thrown on for warmth a costly mantle of white ermine lined with Alexandrine silk. Okay. These are kind of treasures of the East, the implication here. Her side was entirely uncovered. Her face, her neck, and her breast. So where exactly is she wearing this mantle?
Around her neck and to the side.
Yeah, or thrown over her back or something, because everything else is exposed. Okay? She was whiter than hawthorn blossom. He goes forward and she calls to him. He sits down in front of the bed. Lanval, handsome friend, for you I have come out of my own land. I've come from afar to look for you, if you are valiant and courteous. No emperor, count, or king ever had such joy or good fortune. For I love you more than anything. Okay, now this is the very first time he has ever laid eyes on her. And as far as he knows, she's ever laid eyes on him. He looks at her, saw that she was beautiful. Love stung him with a spark that lit and inflamed his heart. He responded fittingly. If it pleased you that such joy should come to me as to have you consent to love me, you could never command anything that I would not do to the best of my power, be it folly or wisdom. Perfect courtly love response. If you love me, command me, and I will do whatever you command, if it is in my power, he says. Whether what you command me is foolish or wise. Okay? Pretty clear. I will do what you command. For you I will give up everyone. I never wish to part from you. That is what I most desire. She hears this, and she grants him her love and her body. Notice the two are separate. Okay? Now Lanval is on the right path. Where was he before? Think about it. When the poem opens, he's depressed. He's all alone. Arthur's forgotten him. Everybody else is getting treasure and reward, but not Lanval. Okay? Now he's gotten treasure and reward. And she gives him one more gift, that he'll never again want anything. Want there has both the old meaning and the modern meaning. The old meaning, lack. He'll never again lack anything. He'll have all that he wants. Without having as much of it as he likes. She'll let him give and spend generously. She will provide him with enough. So we're told Lanval is very well situated. The more richly he spends, the more gold and silver he will have. Now, this is a very kind of heroic notion. Because keep in mind, if you go back to the Anglo-Saxon period, kings were supposed to dispense treasure and gifts. Why? Because the idea was that way they secure their knights to them, their things to them, who then are more willing to go out and fight additional battles to secure more treasure. And when a king dispenses treasure, he doesn't give it all away, obviously. Keep some for himself. And so now we're told Lanval, who before spent everything he had and had become poor, now it's almost like, I shouldn't say this. Now what the heck? He's fallen in love with the most beautiful televangelist there is. And she says, spend and you'll get even more. Okay? And so she says, but, there's always a catch, right? You know, I command and beg you, tell no one about this. I'll tell you the whole truth. You would lose me forever if this love should be known. You could never see me again or have possession of my body. She wants to make clear, you know, that he wouldn't get possession of her body at night within the dark, you know. Okay. You won't see me, you won't get to love me. He says, don't worry. He lay down on the bed beside her. Now Lanval is well lodged. So before, he was on the right road. Now he's met his destination. All afternoon he stayed with her until the evening. He would have stayed longer if she would have consented, but she doesn't. She says, up, you can't stay anymore. You go on, I'll remain. But when you want to talk with me, I'll be there. There is no place you can think of where one could have his beloved without reproach or villainy, that I will not be with you at once to do all your will. Wherever you are, if you want me, just call out, and I'll be there somehow. Sounds like an old James Taylor song from the early 1970s. No man but you will see me or hear my words. He kisses her, he gets up. The maidens bring him to the tent. They cover him with rich clothes. And we're told they give him water for his hands, towel to dry them. They take him to the table. He eats supper with her. He's served courteously and all that. Okay. They bring him to his horse. They put its saddle on. He takes his leave. He mounts. He rides away. He looks back, and he's greatly troubled. Line 196. He thinks about his adventure, worrying to himself. Why? As he gets farther away from her, what happens?
He thinks that she's actually dead. It was a dream.
Yeah, was it real? Because, man, if it was, or if it wasn't, that was the best dream he ever had. Because keep in mind, if he was dreaming, he dreamed himself new clothes. That's kind of hard to do. I've never dreamt of being a millionaire and woken up, gotten on my bank account, and hello. That'd be a nice dream. He goes thinking along about his adventure. He's astonished. He doesn't know what to think. He doesn't believe he'll ever see her again. He goes to his lodging. And what does he discover? His men are changed. They have new livery on. Livery, their clothing, their uniforms, let's say. That night he keeps a rich table, meaning he throws a big party and never runs out of food or drink. No knight in the town who greatly needed sustenance, whom Lanval does not have brought to him and well and richly served. He gives gifts, he ransoms prisoners, he clothes minstrels, he does great honor. Okay? So he is showering his wealth out upon whom? Everybody, not just the high and mighty of King Arthur's court. Okay? There was no stranger or dear friend to whom Lanval did not give. But we're told he has great joy and pleasure because he can see his beloved whenever he wants. She's entirely at his command. That same year, after the feast of St. John, 30 knights go off to enjoy themselves in a garden below the tower where the queen is staying. Guinevere has to come in somewhere. And Gawain was with them, and his cousin, the handsome Yvain. Gawain, the noble, the valiant, who made himself so beloved by everyone, says what? We've done wrong not to have brought along with us our companion Lanval, who is so generous and courteous, and whose father is a rich king. So they go back to Lanval and persuade him to come. The queen, meanwhile, looking out over the window, she has some ladies with her. They see the king's household, and she sees Lanval, and we're told, notices him. Notice, There's a difference between just seeing him. When she notices him, it's all of her attention is now focused on him. He's got a great big old bullseye on the back of his back. And she calls one of her ladies, and the ladies are going to go off to where the men are in the orchard. And she takes 30 or 40. She took 30 or more women with her, and they go down by the stairs. The knights go to meet them. Page 113. They take the ladies by the hand. The conversation was not unrefined, which means it was refined. The men aren't being pigs, in other words. Okay. And Lanval just kind of wanders off by himself. Now, these are 30 beautiful women. Think, Miss USA, Miss Universe, whatever. Even with the transgender ones, I guess, if you're familiar with the news story recently. And Lanval's, off wandering by himself. Now, this is going to be interesting because Guinevere is going to accuse him of some things in a moment. And he's thinking, it's going to be a long time before whatever her name is, we're not told her name, his honey, can come be with him, to kiss, embrace, and touch her. He values little another's joy if he does not have what pleases him. Well, this tells us what about Lanval? Yeah, getting a little selfish. Okay, is it justifiable selfishness? She's the queen of the fairies. And she's the most beautiful woman, if that's really what she is, who's ever been on Earth. You could expect him to be, a little selfish. And so the queen comes and sits by him, and we're told she showed him all her feelings. Lanval, I've honored you greatly and loved you and held you very dear. You can have all my love. Tell me your desire. Now, put that in modern language. What is she saying? Okay. What else is she saying? Yes, I have deigned to smile upon you. You may love me now. Kind of like, and when you're done, you can go away.
Crazy presents.
Tell me your desire. I'm willing to be your lover. You should be delighted with me. Talk about selfish, a little snobby here. And he says, let me be. I have no interest in loving you. Courtly love tradition, out the window. I mean, he's not following the rules of chivalry here. I have no interest in loving you. For a long time I've served the king. I don't want to betray my faith to him. Never for you or for your love shall I wrong my lord. And the queen becomes understandably, according to the courtly love tradition, furious. And she says, well, it's quite clear to me you have no interest in that pleasure. That pleasure. People have often told me you're not interested in women. You have shapely young men and take your pleasure with them. She accuses him of being gay. Base coward, infamous wretch. My lord's badly repaid for allowing you to remain. What does it mean for Arthur to have men like you, in his presence? Okay. And when he heard this, he was very distressed. He was not slow to respond. Out of anger, he said something he would often regret. And he says, I know nothing about that line of work, but I love and am loved by one who should be valued more highly than all the women I know. Slam. And I'll tell you one thing, and know it well and openly, okay? He goes beyond the slam. This is like Beowulf going beyond putting Unfer down in the flitting episode and then jumping in both feet and saying, and you killed your brothers and, Know it well and openly. Any one of her servants, even the poorest maid, is worth more than you. That is, the lowest maid who goes into the bedrooms at night, pulls the chamber pot out from under the bedroom, takes it out, throws it out. She is more beautiful than you are. in body, face, and beauty, in manners and goodness. Okay, body, face, and beauty. But when you talk about manners and goodness, what are you getting at? Your soul, your spirit, your sense of morale, who you really are. Body, face, and beauty, as we all know, those can be manipulated. Those can be manufactured. Manners, okay, goodness, kind of hard. So she goes to her chamber and cries. She's very upset. And she takes to her bed and she's sick. She would not get up unless the king did the right thing. So what does Guinevere do? She throws a little hissy fit. She gets up in her bed. Until Arthur does what? Grants her her wish. Until she gets her way. Now, this is the portrayal that you get of Guinevere in a lot of Arthurian literature. Not in Thomas Malory, however. Okay? So the king returns from the woods. He'd had a pleasant day. He goes into the queen's rooms. He sees her. She makes her appeal. She falls at his feet. She says Lanval has shamed her. Now, how does she say Lanval shamed her?
He asked her to be his lover.
Anybody know the biblical example kind of this?
Joseph?
Exactly. Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Okay? After Joseph kind of rose up in stature a little bit, he became head of the household of this guy Potiphar. And Potiphar's wife took a look at him and said, that is a fine specimen of a man. And she goes and tries to get him to sleep with her. He says no. He runs away. She holds on to his clothes. She pulls all his clothes off. And the next thing you know, she's telling Potiphar, look, he tried to rape me. And I grabbed his clothes and he ran. Okay? And so Joseph gets thrown in jail. Same story. Exact same story here. And then she says she refused him, and so he insulted her greatly. He said his beloved was more beautiful, blah, 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 blah. And so the king gets angry. He says Lanval will have to defend himself in court, and if he can't, he'll get burned or hanged. So Lanval is brought in front of everyone. Well, let me go back. King goes out, and we go back to Lanval, and he's in his chamber, and he realizes he's done what? He messed up. Because his lady said, you can't ever mention me. You can never say anything about us. In other words, our affair must be just that, secret. Okay. In the courtly love tradition, if a knight is trying to hit on his lord's wife, he doesn't advertise it. It doesn't take out signs and newspaper articles and such. And so that if he does win her affection, he still doesn't make it known. It's a secret, illicit affair. So Lanval realizes he'll never see her again. And he curses himself and thinks about killing himself, but he can't. So the king sends men to him, and they bring him before the king. And the king says, line 363, Vassal, you've done me a great wrong. You began too base a suit to shame and revile and insult the queen. You boasted foolishly. Lanval denies the dishonor. Okay. And he says he'll do whatever the court demands. Who comes to Lanval's defense? Before the lady does. Sir Gawain. Okay. About line 400. So they all go off together. I'm picking up a little earlier than that, about 387. They all go off together and decide and judge that Lanval should have his day in court, but he must provide guarantees for his lord, that he'll await his judgment in return. Sir Gawain says, line 400, he'll act as guarantor. What that means is if Lanval does not return to court, whatever the judgment would have been, falls on Sir Gawain. Okay? And so the king says, all right, and everybody disbands. Skip to line 415. The day comes that they determined Lanval would have to prove his case. King and queen were there, and the guarantors brought Lanval. Everyone was sad for him. I believe there were some 100 there who would have done anything in their power to free him without a trial. He was very wrongly accused. Why is everybody all of a sudden sorry for Lanval?
Bottom stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he was like the government. He gave them all kinds of free stuff. Okay? Or at least how some would like the government to be. We won't go there. And so the king demands the verdict. The knights have to decide. Is he guilty or is he innocent? Many want to find him guilty, we're told. Line 431. The Count of Cornwall says we must not fall short, for whoever may weep or sing, the law must take precedence. The king has spoken against his vassal, whom I hear you call Lanval. He accused him of a crime, blah, 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 blah. Okay? If his, line 452, they say, if his lady should come forward, and what he said about her, which made the queen angry, was true, then he'll receive mercy. Okay, now Lanval hasn't spoken with her in however long this is. Days, weeks, months, who knows. If he can't produce proof, then we must make him understand this. He loses all his service to the king and must take his leave of him. So they're trying to wriggle out of the sentence of burning or hanging. They're now saying, if he can't prove his case, he becomes an exile. He has to become an outcast. So they send to Lanval. They tell him what he must do. And he says, I can't. I can't. He can't snap his fingers and make her appear. So they go back to the judges. And we're told, 471. Just as they were about to make their ruling, they saw two maidens coming on two beautiful brisk palfreys, extremely lovely, dressed in purple taffeta down to their bare skin. Everyone gazed at them eagerly. Gawain and 3 knights with him went to Lanval and told him. He showed him the two maidens. He was very happy, begged him to say whether this was his beloved. Lanval says, I don't know who they are or where they come from or where they are going. Okay? When Sir Gawain says, is this your beloved? What is another way of taking that question?
Do you want to not be found guilty?
Well, okay. But he looks at these two beautiful women on these two horses, and he says, is one of these your beloved? What is he really suggesting by that?
One of these is your beloved.
Well, they're both apparently more beautiful than Guinevere.
Yes! They are, yeah, they'll do. It's one of these, even if one of them isn't. Say one of them is, because, okay. The maidens go along on their horses. Notice they ride into the castle. They ride right up to the dais that Arthur is sitting at. And then they say, make your chambers ready and spread out silks where my lady can step. She's so good, she can't even step on the bare ground. Okay? If she wants to take lodging with you. He granted this to them. He calls 2 knights. They led them up to the chambers. The king asks his nobles for the verdict, and they say, we lost our place because of the 2 women who just came in. We've not made a decision. Now we'll resume the trial. And they start talking again, and there's more noise. And 2 more maidens of noble bearing, dressed in cool silks, page 510, riding 2 Spanish mules, come in. The vassals are delighted by this. Now, who are the vassals? The knights, exactly. And they say to each other that now Lanval is cured. Okay, by saying that, they are saying these 2 women are more beautiful than Guinevere. Yvain says, rejoice. For the love of God, speak to us. Here come 2 maidens, very elegant and beautiful. Surely it is your beloved. Nope, never seen them before. The maidens come. dismount before the king. Many people greatly praised their bodies, faces, and coloring. I mean, these are gorgeous women. Both of them were certainly worth more than the queen ever was. And the elder speaks and says, "Make ready to receive my lady. She's coming here to speak to you." So he says, "Okay." Queen's now getting angry. She's sitting there looking at her watch, wrapping her fingers, going, "Come on." And you have to start to wonder, Guinevere's kind of going, can we get this done before she comes? Like, maybe she's aware. They were about to make a decision. 5:47. When through the town comes a maiden riding on a horse. There was no lady in the world more beautiful. She was riding a white palfrey, which carried her well and gently. It had, this is the horse, not the lady, a well-shaped neck and head. No more beautiful animal under heaven. Isn't that fitting? You wouldn't put a beautiful lady on an ugly horse. Okay? Or I guess an ugly horse on a beautiful lady. But you can... The palfrey was richly harnessed. No count or king could have afforded it all without selling or mortgaging land. She's dressed like this. A shift of white linen, which let both her sides be seen as it was laced on either side. So she's got something that comes down over her front and over her back, and it just has laces down the sides. She had a lovely body, a long waist. I'm not really sure what that means, because I think of a long waist and it's just deformed in some way, right? A long waist, a neck wider than snow on a branch, gray-green eyes. Elves' eyes are almost always gray, okay? And a lovely forehead and curling golden hair. No golden thread cast such a gleam as did her hair in the sun. So her hair is even richer than gold, seemingly. Her mantle was dark purple. She had wrapped its ends around her. She holds a falcon on her fist, indicating what?
Nobility.
Royalty. Royalty. Okay? And a greyhound runs behind her. Greyhound racing is also the sport of kings, as is falconry. No one in the town, great or small, not the old men or the children, who did not go to look at her. As they saw her pass, there was no joking about her beauty. She came along quite slowly. The judges who saw her considered it a great marvel. We already know Arthur likes marvels. Okay? No one who looked at her did not grow warm with sheer joy. I don't know what that means. She walks by and they're all kind of going, like whatever their deepest desire is, she fulfills it somehow. Those who loved the knight came to him, told him of the maiden, and said, "Here comes one who is not tawny nor dark." Well, none of the other four were tawny nor dark. She is the loveliest in the world of all the women who live. Are those people going to be hung or burnt also for saying that? Lanval heard this. He lifts his head and sighs. The blood rises to his face. It is my beloved. Now I care little who may kill me, if she does not take pity on me, for I am cured when I see her. Isn't that beautiful? He has such love, okay? Later, in the later Middle Ages, in the early Renaissance, even up through Shakespeare's day, you will read about people who suffer from love sickness. Chaucer's Troilus and Cressida even. Troilus suffers from love sickness when he goes on and talks about how he's a warrior, he's a soldier, he'll never fall in love. Women make you weak, blah, 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 blah. And Cupid comes and wham, right between the eyes. Okay? Just nails them. That's another thing you never do in a medieval story. You never rant and rave against love because you're going to go head over heels. Okay? And because of that, because Cupid nails him with an arrow of love, Troilus can't do anything. He can't tie up his shoes properly. He can't get dressed properly. And he walks around town all day long when he can get up out of bed, just going, sighing for love. Okay? Becomes a real big trope later on. So, notice he says, I don't care if I live or not, because I've seen her again, and that's enough. You know, it's like Romeo outside Juliet's window, just hoping for a glimpse of her. The lady enters the palace. Such a beauty had never come there. She dismounts before the king so that she is quite visible to all. That can have a variety of meanings, it seems to me, because of what she's wearing. Okay? How does she get off this horse? We're not told she's sitting side saddle. Just let your mind wander if you want. She lets her mantle fall so that they could see her better. The king, who was very well bred, got up to meet her. Notice we're not told when the other four women come in that Arthur rises. So why does he rise here? I mean, they're women. I think there's a reason, and that is that Arthur recognizes a superior. Arthur recognizes she's not queen of this world, or even of a land in this world. Okay? And all the others honored her and offered themselves to serve her. I bet they did. They're probably slobbering on their feet, you know. And she says, I have fallen in love with one of your vassals. You see him here, it is Lanval. He was accused in your court. I do not wish it to be held against him concerning what he said. You should know that the queen was wrong. He never asked for her love. Now, has Lanval said anything to her? So how does she know? You know, Twilight Zone, because the Celtic fairy world, the other world, is where? All around. Kind of a little different plane of existence, let's say. And concerning the boast he made, if he can be acquitted by me, let your nobles set him free. And I always kind of, it's not in the text, but I always kind of have that image that she gets a chair and sets it next to a table. She climbs up on the table and stands here and does this. Just, you know, Guinevere, sorry. Runner-up's fine, you know. And the king grants that it should be so, and they should judge rightly. There was not one who did not judge that Lanval was completely exonerated. The maiden takes her leave. The king can't stop her. She gets on her horse. Lanval gets up. He jumps up on the palfrey behind her, and they go off to Avalon. That is the same Avalon that at the end of Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur, that Arthur will go to when he's mostly dead. Okay? According to some of the Arthurian traditions, Arthur isn't really dead, he's just sleeping. And when England has its greatest need of him, he will return again. Okay? Says he goes to Avalon, so the Bretons tell us. To a very beautiful island, the young man was carried off there. No one ever heard another word of him, and I can tell no more. Now, I'm going to talk for a minute about this Lanval, because it's a slightly different story. But there's another story that's kind of similar to this, called, I think it's The Rime, I've not read it in 30 years, of Thomas Leicester. And it's about this guy, Thomas, who gets kidnapped by the fairies and taken off to the fairy world to be the lover of the queen of the fairy world. Okay? The difference? This guy's real. Thomas Leicester was a real person who, quote unquote, disappeared. Okay? And this story was made about him. So just throw that out there for what it's worth. Now, in this version, in the Middle English version, Lanval, the story's quite a bit different. And in that one, I'm going to talk about this before we get to the Middle English lyrics. In that one, what we see is Arthur and his knights are sitting around the round table, and they're drinking. Okay? And they're drinking out of regular goblets and horns and stuff, but then a special drinking horn is brought in. And they're told that when they drink from that horn, if they make a boast about their wife or girlfriend that is not true, they will spill. And the boast is that my wife or girlfriend is true to me. In other words, it's a fidelity horn. It's what you can use to determine whether or not your significant other is true to you. And so they start drinking it, you know. And some guys, it doesn't spill at all, and a couple of guys it does. And Arthur takes the horn and he says, I swear, you know, essentially, like by God and king and country, you know, that Guinevere is true to me. And he can't even get the horn close to his lips before it's spilling all over his chest. Okay. Now, this is one of the images you have of Guinevere in medieval literature. Okay. This horn is magically endowed by the fairies. So what does that tell us about Guinevere? Okay. Guinevere, in terms of the whole courtly love tradition, yeah, she'd be one of those ladies. Sure, Gawain, yeah, make your pitch at me. In fact, don't make your pitch at me, I'll pitch at you, kind of a thing. Okay? All right, that's enough for Lanval. I want to look at some of the lyrics. I don't want to look at many. We won't be here much longer. Actually, there aren't many. I thought there were more than that. Wow. There are really very few. But there are probably thousands of lyrics that survive from the Middle Ages. Okay? Some of the manuscripts do have, like you have on this on page 124 in your book, do have actual scores with them so that we have an idea of what they should have sounded like. And many of these lyrics would be sung by traveling minstrels. In fact, you had during the Middle Ages what are called goliards or goliardic poets or singers. Okay? And these were guys who would go around from town to town and sing. The only difference between goliards and, say, a regular minstrel is these guys often sang dirty songs. I mean, it was like a special repertoire, okay, of music. So let's look at a few of these. Do they have Sing of a Maiden? Yes, okay. Summer is he coming in. Summer is he coming in. Sing cuckoo new, sing cuckoo, sing cuckoo, sing cuckoo new. Okay, you get what the refrain essentially is going to be. And cuckoo is the cuckoo bird, is what it's saying there. So summer is coming in. Loudly sing, cuckoo. Groweth said and groweth said and blueth mid, and springeth the wood anew. Sing, cuckoo. Okay, the seed grows, and the meadow blooms, and the wood, the forest, burst into leaf. The ewe bleats after the lamb. Okay, the cow or the calf lows after the cow. The bull starts, and the buck farts. Okay, that's what vertith is. Notice no gloss. Don't want to, offend your tender ears. Okay, merrily sing cuckoo. Well sing you, cuckoo. Now such you have. Look at line 15 and your gloss. Where is that gloss? There it is. Well sings never new. You sing well, cuckoo, now never cease. This is just a simple little beginning, even though it's summer is coming in. This is a springtime song, beginning of spring. Now look at Foolish in the Frith. For a lot of these, there's not a whole lot to say. They're just kind of silly songs. Foolish in the frith, the fishes in the flood, and Emon wax a wood. Much sorrow he walk with, for best of bone and blood. Okay? Foolish in the frith, fowls in the wood, the fish in the water, and I must grow mad. That's what woad means. Mad. Crazy. Not angry. Okay? Much sorrow I walk with, for beast of bone and blood. Why? Notice the change in number of person. Fowls in the forest, fishes, plural, in the river or stream, and I, plural, singular. The birds have their mates, the fish have their mates, and I must go mad. Why? Because the speaker's alone. And what time of the year is it? It's spring. Okay? I want to skip the next one between March and April. Go to... I want to skip the other one too. In fact, I want to skip both those pages. Go to 128. And we'll do I Sing of a Maiden, Adam lay bounden. Bring us in good ale. I mean, everybody ought to like that song. So, I sing of a maiden. I sing of a maiden that is mackless, king of alle kinges, to Hera's son Shichas. He kam also stille, there his moder was, as dew in Aprila, that fulleth on the grass. He kam also stille, to his moder's boer, as dew in Aprila, that falleth on the floor. He kam also stille, there his moder lie, as dew in Aprila, that falleth on the spray. Moder and maiden was never known but she. Well may switch a lady, godus moder bay. Okay? I sing of a maiden that is mackless does mean matchless or unique. It also means mateless. She doesn't have her make, her equal, in other words. King of all kings, to her son she chose. Okay? How did she choose her son? How did she choose the King of all kings to be her son? Sunday was March 25th. It's the Feast of the Annunciation. What did Mary say to Gabriel? Be it unto me according to as you have said. In other words, she could have said, no, I don't think so. I don't want to do that. Okay? But she did. She chose to allow it to happen. He came, also here means as still or gently, where his mother was, as dew in April falls on the grass. Now, does dew fall on the grass? It just appears. He, her son, came to where his mother was, literally, we're talking about in the womb, as dew appears on the grass. You can if you actually set up a camera and you photograph it all night long. But other than that, you can't watch dew appear. It just magically. He came as still to his mother's bower, as dew in April that falls on the flower. Okay? Two images now. To where she was, to her bower. He came as still, there his mother lay, as dew in April falls on the spray. So we have to where she is, as dew falls on the grass, to her bower or her chamber, as dew falls on the flower, okay? And then where she lay, as dew falls on the spray. the difference between spray and flower being like a rose blossom, and a spray being like baby's breath, lilac blossoms, okay, where you have a clump of blossoms. Mother and maiden was never none but she. That is, mother and yet maiden was never none but she. Well may such a lady, well, that is, it's fitting that such a lady, God's mother be. That is, one who's both a maiden, virgin, okay, because this is pretty much Catholic England at the time, okay, and mother. Notice, early 15th century. Now, a lot of the lyrics that we have date from the later 14th to the early 15th century. We don't have many from earlier, though we assume people were singing songs. They just didn't get written down. And we don't have them in here, I don't think, or we're not doing them for class at least. But a lot of the Middle English ballads that survive, all the stories you are familiar with, for example, of Robin Hood, okay, those all date from a manuscript that dates from about 1500. But the stories probably go back 200 or 300 years earlier, okay? Look at the next one, Adam Leigh Bounden. This has actually been recorded by a couple of English choirs as Christmas music. Adam Leigh Bounden, Bounden in a bond, 4,000 winter thought he not too long, and all was for an apple that he took, as clerk as finden are written in her book. Ne had the apple taka been, the apple taken been, ne had never oor laddie a been heaven a quin. Blessed be the time that apple taka was, therefore we maun singing Deo Gracias. Adam lay bound in a bond, that is, he lay bound in a bounding, wrapped up, for 4,000 winters, thought he not too long. Why 4,000 winters? Because the old traditional dating of the world was that the world essentially began, I think it's 4004 BC. And in the 17th century, late 17th century, a man named Bishop Ussher actually goes through a chronology of scripture and everything, and he goes back and he dates it. I think he dates it to March 25th, 4004 BC. How you get the first day of creation being March 25th, whatever happened to January 1st through March 24th, you know. March 25th is the day, for those of you who are Tolkien weirdos, March 25th is the day that Frodo destroys the ring, or that Gollum destroys the ring. Tolkien says in his letters it's for two reasons. One, the Annunciation, and two, because that's the day the world was created. I don't know if he actually believed that or not, but, you know, Tolkien was kind of odd. Thought he not too long, and all was for an apple that he took, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, as clerks, scholars, find written in their book. What book? Why only scholars? Hadn't been translated into English yet. Okay? Nor had the apple taken been, nor had never Our Lady been heaven's queen. In other words, this is the idea, and the idea comes from St. Augustine again, of Hippo, the idea of the fortunate fall. We are also fortunate that Adam and Eve screwed up in the Garden of Eden. Because if they hadn't screwed up, Jesus never would have come. Okay? Yeah. I like the look on your face. What the hell? How in the world? Okay? And this is where, you know, the Orthodox Church, for example, looks at St. Augustine and goes, no, we'll call him blessed, because he doesn't really merit saint, because this is a screwy idea. Okay? The idea that, you know, they had to screw up in order so that God could do something. Yeah, fix the screw up. Like God kind of went, oh! They surprised me. How do I work that out now? Okay? So, if they hadn't screwed up, Mary would have never been heaven's queen. Therefore, blessed be the time that the apple was taken. I mean, try to wrap your minds theologically around that. It's like, take my Inklings class this fall, and we'll talk about this a little bit. In C.S. Lewis's novel, Perelandra. Anybody familiar with that? One or two? You have this wonderful portrayal of the fall of another world, Venus. Okay? And the arguments that Satan uses to try to make the Eve figure of Perelandra to fall. And it's just like this. Because essentially what he says is, God really wants you to break this law. Why? Well, according to this, so that he can then do something even more wonderful, as it were. I don't know.
But then why would Satan support that?
You know.
Well, then there's the argument that God made everything, therefore God made Satan. Therefore God put Satan in the apple tree to say, hey baby, take this.
God made Satan. Satan was the highest of the created. Okay.
Slap yourself in circles all day.
All right, so because that, gets a little too heady, let's go on to ale. Bring us in good ale, and bring us in good ale. For our Blessed Lady's sake, bring us in good ale. For the sake of Mary, bring us in good ale. Bring us in no brown bread, for that is made of bran. They weren't on this healthy kick and all that kind of stuff about eating bran. Our medieval ancestors would go, are you crazy? You can eat finely ground white flour, and you want to eat bran? That's what we feed to horses and pigs and. Nor bring us in no white bread, for therein is no game, but bring us in good ale. In other words, leave the staples, just bring the beer. Okay? Bring us in no beef, for there is many bones, but bring us in good ale, for that goeth down at once. Beef, meat you have to work at, right? Unless you grind it up, put it in a blender and drink it.
Slime.
Yeah, big slime. Okay? So bring us in good ale. Bring us in no bacon, for that is passing fat, and you have to understand British or English bacon and not American bacon, because it is pretty much all the gristly part. Which personally, all the times I've had English bacon, is still good.
It's bacon.
Okay? Yeah, I mean,
It's bacon.
it's bacon. How can it be bad? Sorry for you vegans and such. Bring us in no mutton, for that is often lean. Bring us in no tripes, for they be seldom clean. But bring us in good ale. Bring us in no eggs. You get the idea of what's going on here. Skip the food, bring the booze. Okay? Go on to the next one. We'll be out of here by 6. Of all creatures, women be best.
Well, somebody has to say first.
Though in the 17th century, John Donne is going to write in his Paradoxes and Problems pretty much just the opposite, in about 20 different little philosophical poems, let's say. So of all creatures, women be best. And then you have the Latin, quis contrarium virum est.
The opposite.
The opposite of this is true. Okay. In every place you may well see that women be true as turtle on tree, that is turtle dove, not liberal in language, but ever in secret. And great joy among them is for to be. The steadfastness of women will never be done. So gentle, so courteous, they be each one, ever each one. Meek as a lamb, still as a stone, crooked. That's what that word literally is, crooked, though you've got perverse as a gloss there. Nor crabbed find ye none. Men be more cumbers. We would throw an on there, cumbersome, troublesome, 1,000-fold. And I marvel how they dare be so bold against women for to hold, seeing them so patient, soft, and cold. Think of the wife of Bath when you hear this. Women, patient, soft. For tell a woman all your counsel, and she can keep it wonderly well. She had rather, lever, go straight to hell, quick to hell, alive to hell, than to her neighbor she would have tell. Now say well by women, or else be still, for they never displeased men by their will. And I've not checked this, but I think it's true. Will, word will, at least later in Shakespeare's day, it has a whole bunch of meanings. Okay? In Shakespeare's sonnet, (135), I believe it is, he puns on his name, Will, because will has a whole bunch of meanings in Shakespeare's day, and I'm pretty sure it does in the Middle Ages too. One of them is obviously volition. Okay? One of them, in Shakespeare's case, is a name. Another one is genitalia. And another one is sexual desire. Okay, we'll have to do that 135 if we don't do any other sonnets, because I will have piqued your interest. What does he say? For they never displeased man by their will. And maybe this one. I don't know of many women named Will. Wilhelmina, yeah. Okay, but not just Will. To be angry or wroth, they can no skill. That means they have or they know no skill. For I dare say they think, it's kind of interesting. I'm hearing, little snickers by guys. Yeah, right. They think not ill. True ye, true means believe. Believe you that women list to smatter. Okay? Do you believe that women enjoy chattering? Or against their husbands for to clatter? Nay, they had rather fast bread and water, meaning fast from other food and only eat bread and water, than for to deal in such a matter, that is, to be talkative and nags and all that kind of stuff. To the tavern they will not go, nor to the alehouse never the more, for God knows their hearts would be sorry to spend their husband's money so. Okay, so everything here is contrary. Okay, so everything here, what the speaker is saying is, it's the exact opposite. Okay, last one. My leaf is foreign in a land. My leaf is foreign in a land. Alas, why is she so? And I am so sore bound, and me not come here to. She hath my heart and hold, wherever she read or go, with true love, 1,000-fold. My leaf, my love. My love has gone away. We're going to read, in a couple weeks, John, actually, it probably won't be a couple weeks, because we'll almost be done with class. John Donne's valediction forbidding mourning, as two people get ready to separate. Okay, it's pretty much, it's a longer explanation of this very same idea. My leaf is foreign in a land. Anybody know German? None. Nine. Right. Foreign, Middle English, is related to German foreign, which means to go or to travel. My lover is traveling in a land. Alas, why? I am so sore bound that I might not come to her. She has my heart in hold. Wherever she rides or goes, with true love, 1,000-fold. Okay, we'll stop there. Let me pass these out. If you have any questions. Oh, let me make a couple comments while I'm passing these out about your term papers, because I've had several people ask. I sent 2 emails out today. Stop this.